Have you ever woken up and not quite felt like yourself? Welcome to Who's Lila? Where do we even start? This game is about making faces, the meaning of existence, mythology, secrets, and the titular Lila. There's a lot to unpack right off the bat, like why are there eyeballs in the bathroom cabinet? How come we have a hacksaw in the kitchen? Why are there strange phone calls coming through broken phones? And why is there such a strange fixation on Lady Lilith? The Lilith thing led me down a bit of a rabbit hole and was most of the cause of delay for this video. We will be talking about that later. Before we get into any of the nitty gritty, it's good to get down some basic information. Who's Lila is a point-and-click detective adventure game. It was developed by Garage Heathen and released for purchase 24th of February 2022. It has two distinct screens upon boot, one for making appropriate expressions during conversations, and the other is to point and click and interact with the environment, making our protagonist walk where we choose and interact with other NPCs. We open up without any context, our characters stating they have trouble expressing themselves and need to practice making faces every morning. Checking out the phones, there's a landline and a burner phone. Guess we're not all that innocent. The Nokia turns out to be broken and nobody is calling the landline, so we ignore that for now. We go into the bathroom and find a tutorial note on how to be happy. Think a lot of us need one of those. Nevertheless, while making faces in the mirror, the question arises of what to do when we meet the one in the boiler room. Not knowing what this means, we act afraid and shrug it off. Once we've performed our morning ritual, a dreaded phone call comes through. It's enough to distress our character, as we see the horror across their face. The voice on the other side informs us that Father Lawrence is dead and to meet them at the train station. It seems urgent, but we can take care of other things first. Another call comes through the broken phone, begging Lila to let them back in.
Please. I beg you, let me back.
We have no clue what's going on here, so we're just going to ignore it for now. We enter the kitchen and find many items laying around. Our goal is to dump some things, but there is a suspicious saw on the table and a diary. This is what we see on a first playthrough anyway. It'll change later. Apparently we already know the code to our diary, but as the player, we haven't a clue what it is. When finished having a nose around the kitchen, it's time to grab the bin bag and take it outside. Missing posters for a Tanya Kennedy litter the walls of the staircase for our accommodation. The player can observe these posters and simply move forward. We can optionally greet the door lady and leave the building. Crows have flocked to the area, and while the protagonist declares their knowledge on why these things have gathered, we're still in the dark. Taking the bus to school, we learn from Matt that we haven't been around lately, and people have noticed. As a fun fact, Matt is named after James Hurley of Twin Peaks by David Lynch. You'll see heavy Lynchian themes throughout this entire title. The police are here, and our friends need to talk to us. Our friend Tanya Kennedy is missing, and everyone is desperate to find her. She was last seen with their protagonist, and this was mentioned to the police most likely by another of her friends being interrogated by the police at the time of our little chat with pals. Things get serious as we talk to our friends, but we convince them that we haven't seen Tanya. There is another door here, but we'll be focusing on meeting Martha for now. Ascending the staircase, the rooms act strangely. Going into one room and leaving, we're magically exiting a differently numbered room. Eventually coming across a girl we met at a party who we've forgotten, we pretend to remember Ellie, getting them to divulge information on where Martha is. Earlier, another student stated that she was incredibly intelligent, but also a complete scatterbrain. This comes in handy when learning her classroom number and finding it. Her bag is left wide open on a table, the spare key to her home left for the taking. Speaking of scatterbrains, the teacher left their PC unlocked and we find out Martha's address. Talk about incompetency. Going to the roof, Martha is sitting on the ground after talking to the police. Now it's our turn to interrogate her. We find out that our playable character isn't exactly the nicest person, threatening Martha if she spoke about her relationship with Tanya, the missing girl. Things get very uncomfortable when suddenly Michael comes on the scene. He's got quite the temper and we'll need to monitor our expressions to keep him calm, tease, or outright anger him. Michael just wants to know where Tanya is, despite his demeanour, and also because Tanya is his girlfriend. Depending on how the conversation goes, Michael will let his guard down, letting us take advantage of the situation. We'll get beaten to a pulp, or Michael will throw us off the roof and we go straight to limbo. Choosing the not meeting God route, we get our rear ends handed to us. but we endure the beating and pull ourselves together enough to pay Martha a visit. We arrive and find the front door is locked. We wait for somebody to come along and go inside, allowing us entry into the complex. Upon our first step inside, the same gentleman asks why we're there, stating a lot of unsavory characters have been visiting the premises. Lying, we pretend to be a rat exterminator, or visiting somebody, and pass by through sheer charisma. Climbing the stairs, the atmosphere turns grim. Red paints the screen as we head inside Martha's apartment. Hiding inside her closet, we await Martha's arrival. While we wait, clicking on items, our protagonist makes an interesting comment. Martha is a very naughty girl. Keep this in mind for later. Interacting with some other things gives an Easter egg, referencing a David Lynch movie, and as time passes, Martha comes back home. Popping out of the closet at an opportune moment, she's naturally shocked and asks if we're here to finish the job. Finally, our character shapeshifts into a similar image of the missing girl, Tanya Kennedy. Martha asks if we're Tanya, and no, we let Martha know exactly who we are.
The name is Lila.
Returning home, we ponder our actions and just what was that thing that Martha turned into. It looked like a weird fish creature. Getting off the bus, the police are investigating the area and ask who we are. Admitting to being William, we're arrested and brought in for questioning. At first, a kind officer asks who we are, what we do, and our relationship with Tanya Kennedy. This is where we try to manipulate the cops into believing we had nothing to do with the disappearance of Tanya. We claim bullying occurred, show off the bruises Michael left, and put the blame on him for his violent tendencies. The officer writes everything down and leaves. Shortly after, a more straightforward cop asks a similar questions to the last officer, with a twist. A torso was found in the rubbish bag we dumped, and the handprints are being analysed for fingerprints. Absolutely horrified, we do our best to avoid being taken in for justice to be served. William cut up the parts and placed them separately around town, but he got sloppy with the last one. The cop states they know we've committed the atrocity, but earlier mentioned fingerprints were still being looked into. The police cannot pinpoint that it was us just yet. William blacks out and recalls a memory of laying with Tanya on the bed and asking if she was really Lila. Both have nearly the exact same face, it's uncanny. Tanya doesn't know what Will is talking about. Coming back, Will explains to the cops that our friends secretly hated us and Michael, Tanya's boyfriend, beat us up and is likely the suspect. We show off our bruises, and with their silver tongue, the earlier officer comes back in to catalogue our story and feels like it could be Michael who did it. The other cop doesn't believe our lies, but is powerless to stop Tanya's boyfriend taking the fall. It turns out another officer has taken a shine to the case and comes in. His name, Detective Yu, and he tells us he's been wanting to speak with us in private, telling us to meet us in a safe place. And we're abruptly met with the main menu again, a tarot card gained from the experience, and William's face asleep once more. Discussions with Detective Yu is available at any point now through the load game menu. Another meta element in the game, and there are many. Detective Yu wants to know more about Lila, explaining that he knows who we are but wants to know precisely what and who Lila truly is. Yu hands us a screen to check out the tarot cards we've been collecting. Who's Lila has numerous endings, and we'll be learning a lot more about each and what it means for William and us as the player. And depending on how we handle the interrogation scene, we can gain either of one or three endings. If we let slip to the man in Martha's accommodation that we're visiting her, the police will know exactly of the extra body, and the officer is all too happy to see justice served. The judgment tarot card received afterwards. Finn. If we decide to confess to the police what Will did, reducing our confidence meter off to the side as required, and ensuring we chose to be sad in the mirror at the start of the game on whether or not you would be sad if a dog died in front of you, and if you'd be sad if your enemy died. This will allow Will to admit to everything. Otherwise, the ending is unattainable in the run. It gives us the Strength Tarot card. Alternatively, we can act smug or disgusted to certain answers during the first officer's questioning, and simply come out as Lila. That interested the officer, and his simultaneous shock. We are told that even though Lila committed the crime, Will must still pay the price in prison. It is revealed that Lila doesn't matter where she goes, because she will still be able to work her magic anywhere anyway. Revelation gained, and a new tarot card, Temperance. If we decide to meet our buddy at the train station, Strupnev explains that a large fire broke out at the former secret society. Who would have guessed we were part of a strange organization? We decide to visit the scene, but are stopped when Strupnev realizes we're hosting Lila. He pleads for her to take him as host instead, and tries to hunt William down. Swerving around corners and manually opening doors, William avoids the hands of Strupnev, finally entering the boiler room. We need to shut our eyes, and to Strupnev's horror, he is absorbed by the boiler. It seems we're related, and manage to avoid a certain fate at her hands. She mentions something though. We've been very naughty. And she gives us some numbers to think about from Father Lawrence. And back to the main menu, receiving the Empress Tarot card in reverse. What is happening so far? Who is Lila? And how are we two people at once? Again we go. Repeat the process until Michael throws us off the building, and Dr. Hades speaks, clearly marking us as in the other world. Left to our own devices, we wander the halls until we have visions of talking to Lila before us. She explains what it means to be connected to a greater spiritual web, and how we are not isolated beings, as well as a little on what she is, but nothing truly on what she is exactly. We go through each conversation snippet as Lila's image glows more bright, until we are once again inside the other place, and brought to a 3D movement section. This isn't just a point-and-click adventure anymore. We're greeted to the sighting of Lila before we can move around in what becomes a first-person adventure. And we spot a projector. It's running a projection of Lila in this area, and here we can choose not to interact with the projector and leave. Depending on whether we take the projected wheel or not, we receive a tarot card. Leave it there, we get the Fool. Take it, and we get the High Priestess. On our way out of the area though, nobody could miss the Lilith moon sigil placed on the rowing handles. And looking toward mythology, this is a sigil dedicated to Lilith, and is representative of the Lilith moon. Lilith is someone who, once again, we'll delve into later, but for now, the Lilith moon is interesting because it was also a supposed invisible moon in 1918. Its existence has since been discredited, but a separate meaning has been given to it, meaning to be the second moon's apogee, or how far or how close the orbit of the moon is from any given planet, I believe. Astrology was never my strong point, but I digress. After getting a certain ending, I believe it is the High Priestess, we can also get a wheel from atop a tower that we'll talk about soon. Waking up again, we can also check out the diary. The game's further meta elements kick in, and the code is plainly placed on the Steam library banner for the game, or the itch.io banner. Inside we find a little more on Lila, there's an image of the Lilith moon, and text on how Tanya looks like Lila, insinuating that they're the same person. And a page is missing. It seems there are blackouts when Lila might not know what William is doing when he wrestles for control, or perhaps when Lila is resting, perhaps due to lack of energy. This information is most prominent when visiting the fraternity. We also find out that there are animals being kept by the fraternity, however they're not being eaten yet still disappearing, which would indicate that these animals are being fed to Lila in order to maintain her existence. The topic of tulpas arise in relation to Lila and whether or not she is one. Truthfully, she is an egregore, yet we'll get to that later. Returning to the game and getting to the fraternity, rather than taking the usual route, we ignore the boiler room section and head straight for the old meeting place of our little cult. A police officer stops us for questioning on whether we live on the premises or not, because nobody else is allowed in. We lie casually until the officer is pulled to other duties. Entering the building and pulling apart the yellow tape, we see what remains of the burnt down fraternity. Ashes and 2 rooms to explore. One has a phone we can interact with, but we don't have any number to ring, and the other room has a password protected PC. An explanation on a meditation practice is involved in the book, and there's a chair to sit on while we meditate. Holding still and focusing on the center, we are transported to the other world, where we also see the stranger, who looks eerily similar to ourselves. We are simply captivated by them and unable to look away. Suddenly the screen shifts, and images of changing faces laugh and mock us. all before the vision of a demon appears. This demon claims power over us, stating that we are their new vessel, read our mind for what we want, we are given a servitor, and this demon puts a link on our PC's clipboard to paste into a web browser and bringing us to a free DLC page. The demon tells us that if we wish to contact Father Lawrence, that we can do so with the daemon. We receive the Emperor Tarot card as we are shoved back into the main menu. Closing Who's Lila, we download the demon friend and boot him up with the game open, starting another incarnation. The demon DLC will play some windy atmospheric sounds. Here and there his eyes will also light up and will speak when something of interest is to note. Checking out the Lady Lilith painting, the demon speaks telling us the date was in November. Changing our PC's date to the very same as stated will result in a new scene when staring once more at Lady Lilith's image. A cowering Will by the phone in the same room, begging Lila not to come any closer. He also states that he won't be killing any more animals for her, solidifying the fact that there is animal sacrifice involved for Lila. Lila expresses her disgust at this behaviour and explains a union is better than Will think. Lila approaches Will and we are suddenly transported to a new location as Will, ascending a tower while avoiding Lila's advances. Succeeding, we are met with a loaded film reel. Will takes the reel and dumps it into the abyss below. Lila doesn't believe what Will has done, and we are brought back to the main menu. The tower card appears in her pocket. At a loss and a desire to learn more, we hop back in, make faces, take out the trash, go to school. But this time, we enter the door to the boiler room. The janitor blocks our path, striking up a jokey conversation, stating he knows where Lila and to pass on through. Further mentioning to listen for the music and follow its tune. Doing so, we wander the rooms until we walk into She Who Lurks in the boiler rooms. This is where we have a choice. Close our eyes or keep them open. Self-preservation or destruction. We can do both. Closing our eyes allows us to speak to William, who is trapped inside a machine. He says he has a gift for us and to take it. Lila is quite irritated by this, but nevertheless we get a wheel and... Taking his wheel, we essentially put his body to rest and keep his memories, and get a permanent addition to our inventory for the next playthroughs until used. No matter your choice on what to do regarding opening or closing your eyes, each leads to a different tarot card. Leaving our eyes open will lead to a flashing bright light before back to the menu. If you close your eyes, you'll receive the Wheel of Fortune. If you leave your eyes open, Death card is received. Repeating the pattern, this time with our demon familiar, he tells us to look at the table in the kitchen. Doing so, there's a key that wasn't there before. Taking it, we head to school and use it on Tanya Kennedy's locker. A note and a password-protected phone is there. The note mentions a real Twitter page to visit that hosts the combination for her phone. Opening it up, there's a list of text messages unread. In one text, Tanya divulges a dream that she had with her friend. Because of Lila's association with dreams, because of Lilith's associations, it is plausible that Lila could have implanted something in Tanya's dreams. I wrote that sentence. Well, we delete Martha's for some reason without even looking at them, and then we learn Tanya's location. Will leaves the school and discovers what happened to Tanya. A scene at his home involving Lila, the stranger, who looks like a more feminine version of William, and a confused, terrified Tanya. Will is possessed to do something terrible, bringing meaning as to why Will was doing what he was doing in the first place. Will approaches Tanya, unable to resist their powers, and main menu. The lover's card is received. Resuming regular scheduling, returning to Will's fraternity crime scene with the Daemon familiar, and entering the room with the phone, the Demon will recite a series of numbers to punch in. This can be a bit finicky, so you may need to punch in a few extra numbers than intended, but it's not that bad. We are somehow capable of accessing Father Lawrence, our teacher and leader of our group, through this phone, and he spells out how to access the locked PC in the room next door. Using the PC and entering the passwords, it speaks of memes,
the DNA of the soul,
what they are, which is a spiritual thing, and it further details on what Lila is, how nobody should give her her name, how she is actually an egregore, and finally how to stop her. It essentially boils down to that she is kept alive by people observing and interacting with her. Only by destroying everyone who has interacted with her can L be put to rest. Upon this revelation, we are suddenly brought to the main menu, the Hierophant tarot card received. Since talking to the girl Ellie when attempting to find Martha's belongings, we're reminded of an address to a party. Heading to said location, it's nighttime with a giant field surrounding the house. Passing through, the party is lively with students from the school. Shirley is running the show, and Will can bum a cigarette off of someone before heading inside to the party. Talking to people doesn't elicit much information, but we do find a very drunk Martha in the bedroom. She's upset about her awful boyfriend, who she opens up about, shortly before needing a hand to the bathroom. We let James know about the issue, and head back inside to the party to find a very striking Tanya standing centre of the room. We talk and act very awkwardly, apparently liking her quite a bit, but Tanya doesn't seem to care. We mention the drunk Martha, who turns out to be our friend. She thanks us for helping Martha, and you meet Tanya's friends and boyfriend attending to Martha. Everyone agrees that Martha's partner is a terrible person before Tanya leaves, alone. Tanya and her boyfriend Michael aren't exactly on the best of terms, and you join Tanya outside to admire a painting of a cafe on a wall. Michael comes in and believes he's interrupting a scene between you both. Eventually, Tanya grabs a drink and asks Will to walk with her outside. She explains issues in her relationship, how she doesn't feel like she can get along with people very well, and basically condemns Will expressing his opinion about Michael, her partner. Tanya just snaps at him and then apologizes. Both wind up eventually back at the house party, or nearby, and we hand her a cigarette as she requests. She was meant to quit but couldn't help it. Tanya and Will dance, and visions of owls and ballroom dancing appears, a romance clearly following. Back to the main menu. The Moon Tarot card appears in our inventory. Going meta again, the Tanya Twitter profile mentions a Sunshine Cafe. This clue leads us to a hashtag, and on further investigation, we find the address to this cafe in question. Visiting it and sitting down, a waitress strolls up and pours Lila, not Will, a cup of coffee. They converse about how they will be found out and how time is limited. Yet Lila hushes the waitress. They will save the cafe some time. Lila leaves, and back to the main menu we are, the sung card in hand. During conversations with Detective Yu, we will run into some obstacles. Lila will explain scenarios and choices during the game, and maybe some inklings into her nature. There is the inevitable situation, however, when Detective Yu pulls out his weapon and focuses it towards Lila, inhabiting Will's body. This first-person angle becomes a dilemma. We could shoot, and Lila still survives anyway, or we could Alt F4 and trick Lila, allowing Will to continue living. There is also the matter of Detective Yu learning the truth once all cards have been collected. His face exhibits utter shock, as he learns there is no true way to get rid of Lila. She is eternal. Her real nature, however, is shrouded in mystery for the player. We also learn that all choices, all options possible in life exist on one singular timeline. Everything happens at once, everything exists at once, and thankfully there are no theories on reality shifting. One of the most meta endings whose Lila has to offer involves intentionally corrupting a save file you've created. Going into your save folder and editing any of the WHL files to have random numbers or letters, whatever you want in there, will corrupt it. Booting back up who's Lila and returning to the load game screen will result in a corrupted save file to click on. From here, the daemon familiar we are given will provide coordinates to wander to. At this position, we are met with a mirror image of Will, but with the film reel for a head. William. Interacting with them lets the player ask one question that must be specifically typed in. Numerous questions are recognized, these being who is Detective Yu, who are you, who's Lila, are you the machine, who is the stranger, where am I, where's the body, daddy, 1899, and what for. Others may exist, but have yet to be found. Poor William's actual self trapped forever in this hell, unable to move from this position. The stranger is sometimes a character who appears during the player's time with Who's Lila. They're not only mysterious, they look eerily similar to Will, only more feminine. Who they are is up to player interpretation, but they also seem to have a role in Garage Heathen's upcoming game. There is also the Lilith imagery that appears everywhere in the game. She is traditionally viewed, at least according to the Zohar, as a succubus who seduces men and brings forth nightmares. In some iterations, she was the first woman to be born in the Garden of Eden, refusing to submit to Adam, and flying away from the garden. Several angels were charged with locating her and returning her safely. Other tales involve her birthing demons into the world to this day. She allegedly is the wind that dances on rooftops and has sisters, their names being Nama, Agrat Bat Mahlat, and Ishet, depending on translation. Of course, though, through the ages we encountered the problem of mistranslations and other theories, and obviously the additional attributes to entities as time progresses. All sisters are considered to be aspects of Lilith, such as Nama being mentioned as Lilith the Younger. Lilith the Older is also mentioned, so there is that to consider, but not everybody believes in this. We also have issues regarding Nama as Lilith the Younger when it comes to Gnosticism and her possibly being the second Eve, brought forth by Eve to help repopulate the world. Some people suggest Nama to be the personification of fire itself, destroying Noah's first ark as he was following the false demonic god controlling the world. Nama is also given the function of fancy making and weaving, not just singing elegies and being pleasant to God who recognized her. Theory of all sisters being Lilith creates much conflict. Then there's the theory that the angel Lilith in Gnosticism that came down to Nama upon demand might actually be Lilith herself. There's honestly a lot of food for thought. Today Lilith is viewed as a feminist icon, not just a spirit to murder babies or bring about disease through controlling the winds. She is viewed as an empowering figure, one of rebellion against injustice and much more. I could go on all day about Lilith and theories surrounding her just as much as anyone else could, but that's not the point of the video. It's merely one aspect to it. Lila and Tanya are considered Lilith figures for their seduction, manipulation, and cunning behavior. Lila is eternal just as much as Lilith is. No power has the ability to stop them. Lila explains that even if people were to stop feeding her energy, she would simply go back to a resting state, eventually to be awakened again by anyone who might call upon her. So, who is Lila? Lila is an egregore. What an egregore is essentially an entity born from a group's shared thoughts, feelings, and goals, and is essentially a thought form. Although to some people, egregores are simply demons that are created by a collective will, a kind of force that is brought about by a powerful will and needs to be fed at certain time periods in order to keep it stable. Even if she is forgotten, the fraternity are mistaken. Lila will simply slumber again until another person personifies that right thing or calls upon her areas of expertise as an egregore. It wouldn't be necessarily uncommon for a group to create an egregore that personifies the same areas of expertise as Lilith. Lila as a Lilith figure is eternal. It essentially boils down to that she is kept alive by people observing and interacting with her. There's also the mystery in who Malcolm is. He appeared to be a student that had died at the hands of William, or rather Lila, and was used as a tool for Michael Graves to get closer to Tanya Kennedy, who wound up being her latest victim. For what reason Malcolm died, we do not know. It may have been used as an opportunity to get closer to Tanya Kennedy. Getting back on topic of the Stranger is an instrument to Lila in many ways. Where she appears, it doesn't seem like Lila is too far away. And given Garrett Heathen's next title in the works, it appears that the Stranger is making a reappearance that can change theories on who the spirit is, whether it be a personification of something we simply do not know, or they may instead be secretly pulling the strings of Lila, or both are the same entity, but in separate aspects. We don't know for certain. A conversation between Will and Lila appears after you piss off Michael enough that he throws you off the side of the building. And this discussion is kind of interesting just for the fact that it involves three things: the Visioner, the Perceiver, and the Prince. As mentioned by Lila, may involve the Stranger to some capacity. The Stranger can indeed be the Prince, the Visioner is the lowest point in the spiritual path, the Perceiver being the one to unite with a greater union with the universe, the Prince being the Godhead. The Prince is also described as being someone who is a falsehood, someone who is not actually the grand power. The Prince could be a representation of falsehoods within spirituality, a thing that prevents us from ascending, where instead there is something behind the Prince who is meant to be met rather than the Prince himself. Of course, this could also easily be a lie, because the people we've been meeting haven't exactly been the most trustworthy. The Prince could also easily be the Stranger, Will's version of themselves having met and united with the Godhead, no longer merely looking through the coloured glass shards anymore. There is also the matter of the Holy Union, or the Trinity, which involves the number 3, but I don't know if it actually goes that deep. Who knows for sure. As the Empress is mother to Lila, she even tells Lila that she's been such a naughty girl, much like Lila learned to speak of others such as Martha. Will was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. He worked with the fraternity under Father Lawrence to call upon and control the powers of Lila. Instead, she controlled them. Her art of seduction consumed them, as did greed. Lila fed on the energy the group gathered and gave to her, and her ability to take residence in others' bodies, aka possession, is interesting, especially since the souls or personifications of each person is projected into other things. Will is a wheel. He turns always, despite resistance. Sometimes his power wins temporarily. Lila claims to sleep, so clearly there is a lack of energy supply for her to feed on, and Will is able to resume control when she sleeps. This happens during critical times, such as when speaking with Father Lawrence and learning the method of her destruction. Whenever Lila resumes control, he is ejected back into the machinery, the cog needed to complete the machine for Lila's works. He is simply a tool for other beings. Even the entity we communicate with through meditation claims power over Will. The so-called Emperor, according to the tarot cards, he is the king. The Empress, or his queen, is located in the boiler room. Steam is thought to be spirit. It is water, and water is traditionally connected to femininity. Through the waters of childbirth, the watery abyss from where all was created, the waters of emotion, there is passion and a fire inside the Empress, as is the matron's kind of love for their child, like Lila, even if that may exhibit destructive qualities, like Lilith, similar to the stories of Lilith the Younger and Lilith the Older. Such is my theory. Nevertheless, The story in Who's Lila is a great experience. There was a nice and unexpected turn of events when going in blind. Expecting a simple, goofy, face-making game that actually turned into ARG tier material but in a good way was a fantastic twist. The execution is almost spot on. My next thoughts might be controversial, but I can't help but feel that it is a somewhat empty experience. When boiling it all down to the question of who Lila really is, the game explains it in a mere sentence, and that sentence becomes far too stretched out. Besides this aspect of the game, I thought the writing was highly enjoyable, if predictable. This is just one of 2 quick complaints. My second complaint is that it relies very heavily on David Lynch's electricity themes. It's detrimental in a way because it means the game loses some identity, and Who's Lila is partially just a puddle pretending to be a pool, borrowing elements of Lynch's works to cover this up. Again, I'm not really sure what could have been done differently. Personally, I'm not much of a storyteller at all, so not much help there. My interest began to reside in everything else but who Lila was, such as who is the stranger, who is the empress, who is the emperor, who is the prince, the perceiver, and whatnot. These elements of the story were much more interesting to me than who Lila was, simply because who Lila was already explained, and she's not really worth that much attention. Despite this, I enjoyed my time with Who's Lila, purely by its storytelling, even though I did complain about a portion of it, and its more unique design and gameplay are Who's Lila's highlights. It's a solid recommendation for me to play this title, and if I needed to give this a rating out of 10, it's definitely around the 7 or 8 out of 10 mark. It still made me think about the essence of life, the nature of spirit, and the power of personifications in our world, how meditation can break the barriers between the seen and unseen worlds, also how all of this can be portrayed in visual media. In this area, Who's Lila exceeds. As some last thoughts, there are some things I'd like to mention. When looking at Tanya's phone, we see a random number that turns out to be Dr. Ryukin. It seems that Dr. Ryukin may have been trying to warn Tanya about Lila. Furthermore, there's also the matter of memes. There is a meme that is called Dada. Dada has been spreading in this world for quite some time. Stickers often plastering areas and including a locker that we find inside the school grounds. And we need to briefly talk about the fact that Lila has children and live short-span lives. At least one was cancelled, one had died prematurely. One of Lila's children is also involved in a game called Tigachi, another of Garage Heathen's games where you take care of a little green girl, and the character in Tigachi gets random names. However, she also does have the opportunity to go to the other world, where she says her father wanted to bring her. Who is Daddy? We're not entirely sure. However, she does have a curious question. Is your name Matthew? The same name we see on the locker back in Who's Lila. What we can logically deduce about Matthew is that he is a friend of Michael's, which gives reason for why Michael responded to William the way that he did. More than likely, the Dada sticker that was found on Matthew's locker was a marker for what was yet to come. What I do know is that our Tigachi character is also aware of Daddy, as he used to communicate with her, and she also longs for the forest of Sycamores, which I have also been referring to as the other world. You can actually bring your Tigachi character into said forest with the right prompts, but I digress. Another thing to note is that the Dada dog is not Lila's child, but it was adopted by certain unsavory groups, and these rather unsavory people have been targeting specific peoples. Why? Well, the easiest explanation is because the world is filled with terrible people. Last but not least, there is also the abbreviation of the ultra-influencing works of Animedia, also called WIAM. And what does WIAM sound like? William. So you could make an argument that William is actually at the heart of things because his name was very similar to an abbreviation. But I don't know. And that's where I'll leave things. There's a lot in terms of theory crafting, and I don't want to go too deep into it. This was meant to be a simple review, and quite frankly, I think I've done a good enough job. Thanks for watching, and special thanks to Daniel Cornflake for his support over on Ko-Fi. If you would also like your name shown at the end of each video, consider supporting me on Ko-Fi or on Patreon in the links seen in the description. And in the meantime, if you want more content in between, I do stream on Twitch semi-regularly over at twitch.tv/Venata. Stay safe and until next time.